Mic check, 1 2 1 2.
Can we get serious now?
One thing that did happen during the 60s was some music of an unusual or experimental nature did get recorded and did get released. Now look at who the executives were in those companies at those times. Not hip young guys. These were cigar-chomping old guys who looked at the product that came and said, I don't know. Who knows what it is? Record it, stick it out. If it sells, all right. We were better off with those guys than we are now with the supposedly hip young executives who are making the decisions of what people should see and hear in the marketplace.
Success in the music business begins with a dream, a vision. This podcast will give you, the listener, the insight and tools to turn that vision into a reality. Meet the industry professionals who work day by day behind the scenes, helping to make those dreams come true. Welcome to the business side of music.
You're listening to another edition of the business side of music. In the studio with us today, a couple really cool guys I met, I think we were talking 2 or 3 years ago, Ghost Town Troubadours, Regie, Hamm, and Danny Myrick. And sitting across from me in this lovely Nashville, Tennessee studio, if you don't know who he is, then I'm going to suggest you look up episode 43. Paul Aldrich.
The infamous episode 43? Is that what I'm on?
That's what it is, yeah. Paul Aldrich is here. He's going to co-guest host with us, or guest co-host with us.
I am honored.
No, we're thrilled. And what happened, how this podcast came about is Paul and I were at a breakfast Saturday, and we were talking about the plight of the songwriter and kind of where it's all been and where it's going, what it's about, and these two guys' names came up, Regie and Danny. And let me bring everybody up to speed who's listening, just in case you don't know who these two guys are. Regie Hamm is a
the outside chance.
Yeah.
Lay some odds on that.
Regie Hamm, CSAC Writer of the Year, 95, 96, 97, and 2000. You missed a couple of years there.
I mean, I was busy.
Yeah.
He was just busy spending all that money.
Right.
My wife was.
American Idol Songwriter, 2008. We'll dig into that here in a second. Dove Award nominee in 95, 96, 2002. Season 7, I guess, winner of the American Idol songwriting competition, The Time of My Life, which David Cook, I guess, took the #1 on the AC charts. Yeah. And then Danny Myrick. Danny and I met many, many years ago when we were both young and less gray hair. He was the
Speak for yourself.
lead singer. I will. He was the lead singer of Western Flyer, but notably for some songs that he's written. Craig Morgan's International Harvester, Tim McGraw's Truck Yeah, and of course one of my favorites, the most listened to, or maybe I should say the most played country song of 2009, Jason Aldean's She's Country. Guys, welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir.
So we're talking about the songwriters. We met, like I said, a few years ago when you were touring the nation, filming a documentary, playing in front of people, Ghost Town Troubadours. You started at one end of the country and you drove to the other end of the country. What was that story?
Well, essentially, we were having the conversation that this podcast is about. Like, what is the value of a songwriter? What are our songs worth? And at that point, it was not just financially. It was really like, what difference does this make to the people out there? Do they care anything about the songs, the people behind the songs, or is it just about the record on the radio? And we had a show that was planned in Nashville, and we said, well, you know what? Let's go get out on the road and see. And so we decided to do this crazy thing where we got a van. We started in Nashville, and so we decided to just book shows sort of as we go, and take the money from the night before, whatever we made that night, put it toward travel for the next day, and just work our way to California and go however long it takes us to get there. You know, we ended up booking a couple of things in California that put us on a little bit of a time limit of when we had to get there. But anyway, it was fascinating. We just went town to town over several different towns. We would play a songwriter round like you would see at the Bluebird with the four of us playing. Just having an opportunity to get out there with consumers and ask them, you know, what's your favorite song? Who did that song? Do you know who wrote that song? Seeing just how much that mattered. And what we found out is, honestly, it means a whole lot to the fans. They don't know, but it means a lot to them. It means a lot more to them than it does, you know, Spotify, for example, but it does mean a lot to the fans. That's just not necessarily translating into money at this point.
Did either of you find out that the the fan that loved the song, they would find out once you talk to them, they realized that Jason Aldean wasn't necessarily the writer, or with your Regie, your case, Clay Cross, big hit, I Surrender All. Do they figure out that, wait a minute, those guys didn't write it? There's talent behind those songs?
That is kind of a constant revelation that happens kind of all the time.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's funny because you'll be doing a writer show in Nashville. We know what these are, these writer rounds. We kind of revere the songwriter, or at least we used to here. But sometimes you'll be doing these shows and people think you're doing covers.
Right.
Is this karaoke night? This is like karaoke night, and what's that guy doing She's Country for, And it's like, well, because he wrote She's Country, and they get this really weird light bulb moment, like, wait, you mean Jason Aldean didn't write that,
When we did our shows on the road, typically Aaron Benward, our buddy, who was part of this thing with us, hosted, because he does a show called National Unplugged.
Yeah, he set the table really well for him.
So he would typically, almost after every round of 4 songs, maybe every couple of rounds, would kind of introduce, just in case some of you are just coming in or whatever, just so we're not playing songs. We're not playing cover songs. We actually wrote these songs, and so
we're not a bar band here.
That's right.
Yeah. I mean, we are kind of.
Some nights we are.
Yeah, let's don't raise the standard too high here today.
I mean, we get paid like one.
That's right.
I think even less at this point. Let's start with you, Regie. How did you get into songwriting? I mean, because obviously there's a lot of people that come to town. They want to be a songwriter. They don't know what it takes. They don't know how to get their foot in the door.
I would say that Danny and I are going to have similar stories here. I'm not sure how I could have avoided it, to be quite honest with you. Musical family. My mom was a songwriter. My dad was a guitar player. My grandmother used to sing at gospel night at the Ryman in the 50s, so very musical family. By the time I was 5 or 6, I mean, I was in the family band, so it's just it was a natural outgrowth of, you play music long enough, you start coming up with your own songs. And I think I wrote my first song when I was 9 or something like that. And got my first cut when I was 15.
Right.
So it was, I don't like the word in your blood. I don't know that I necessarily believe that, but it was certainly in my culture. And it was something that, I kind of was good at early, and that gives you confidence in your life, and that makes you kind of believe, it gives you identity, and it gives you kind of a place to hang your hat. And so you just kind of keep doing it. And then you wake up one morning and you're 50 years old and you've been doing it for 40 years or whatever, still trying to impress your wife, with this song and that song or whatever.
Is she impressed much anymore?
No.
Well,
Not by this.
keep working at that, brother.
Yeah, not by this.
You should try hosting a podcast.
Yeah.
Sexy, yes. Danny, how'd you get your foot in the
Same
door?
deal. We grew up very similar. My dad was a preacher, family band. We did our first album when I was 7. Christmas at 9, my brother was 10. He got an electric guitar, I got a bass. We started doing that, and same kind of deal. We grew up in more Southern gospel music, quartet music. I grew up on, the Oak Ridge Boys and Happy Goodman Family and the Cathedrals, Hensons. And I really fell in love. Reggie and I have talked about this a bunch. Really fell in love, like with the Hensons and the Oak Ridge Boys, because they had great bands out on the road, and the Goodmans did too. But anyway, so we would cover songs. My mom was into Bill Gaither, and then of course a little bit more old school, a lot of Dottie Rambo and that kind of stuff. And ultimately, as I got into early teen years, I'd fallen in love with the Eagles and some other things on the radio. I was like, man, I wonder if we could maybe do some music that's a little bit more that direction. So I started writing songs. My first one was probably 14, and got my first cut at 17. And so thought it was easy. Boy, I was clueless.
Right.
Yeah.
Paul, one of the things we talked about with your podcast was taking control of the audience. And I think that speaks volumes, especially when you're writing a song, because that's you want to capture the audience's attention with the story that you're telling. Because really, we say this all here in Nashville, that it all begins with the song, starts with the song, but there's got to be a story to motivate that. Paul, you write humorous. You write, I guess, shall we say, parodies?
Yeah, I do a lot of parodies and a lot of comedy stuff and some serious stuff as well. So hopefully you can tell the difference.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah. I think one of the things we wanted to talk about today especially was where things have been. Reggie, when did you start really seriously professionally songwriting?
Well, I mean, I was serious about it in my teens. I got my first publishing deal. I guess I was about 18 or 19.
Yeah, I guess I should say, when did you get your first?
Yeah,
check?
and then I got my first royalty check, 2021, something like that.
Yeah,
and then I got my first paid publishing deal when I was about 22 or 23.
Danny?
Yeah, I was the first cut that I had. This group called the Dixie Melody Boys had decided to do a Christian country kind of Alabama thing, and they changed their name to the DMB Band. I had a song called "Jesus Is the Light" that they did, went #1, and this is a lesson in music business 101 for ignorant songwriters. So I just, they wanted to cut my song, and we'll put it on the radio. I'm like, awesome. And next thing I know, I get this contract in the mail, and it's basically to do this deal with them. They let me have my songwriter share, my writing share of the royalties, but they took the publishing on it, 100% of the publishing. I didn't know any better and just signed it. It got me signed with BMI. I didn't know what BMI was. About 8 or 9 months after that song went out on the radio, I got a check for like $3,200, and I was 19. I was like, whoa. So, man, maybe if I'd had 10 of these, I start kind of doing that,
All I need is 10. And if I kept that publishing, I'd only need 5 of these.
And if I had understood, honestly, step one would have been if you kept your publishing. Anyway, but that's kind of how it started for me. And then got my first paid pub deal. I was probably 26.
Yeah.
Here's this contract, Danny. Just prick your finger and sign it in blood right there.
That's exactly right.
Put your thumbprint there.
Yeah.
We're going to take a little break. When we come back, I'm going to dig into what we just talked about, where the songwriting business has been to where it is now and where we think it's going to go. In the studio with us today, guest co-host. I'll figure this out by the end of the podcast. Paul Aldrich, who is going to chime in here and ask some really deep, thought-provoking questions.
Wait, let me get on the internet.
Yeah, hurry up. Along with our guests, Regie Hamm and Danny Myrick, and you're listening to this edition of The Business Side of Music.
Hey, this is Doak Turner with Music Starts Here, and I'm sitting here with my pal Bob Bender, sharing expertise and wisdom right here on The Business Side of Music. Stay tuned.
You're listening to The Business Side of Music.
Hi, this is Vinny Ribas, the founder of Indie Connect. Our goal is to ensure that you have the knowledge, the tools, skills, resources, and connections that you need to develop a profitable and long-lasting career in music. One way we do this is through these Business Side of Music podcasts. I'd also like to invite you to check out Indie Connect magazine, our free multimedia online publication packed with practical interviews and advice from music industry experts. Go to www.indieconnectmag.com. That's www.indieconnectmag.com. Let us walk with you and guide you every step of your musical journey.
You're listening to The Business Side of Music.
We're back in the studio. Guest co-host Paul Aldrich sitting across from me. Got that one right. Guests, songwriters Regie Hamm and Danny Myrick are in the studio with us today. You guys started probably at a time when songwriting made sense. You made money doing it. If you could write, even if it wasn't a chart-topping song, if you got a cut on an album, you had a good opportunity to make some money. And then all of a sudden this thing called downloads came along. That changed the dynamics a little bit. But then streaming came into play, and it just literally kicked the legs up from underneath you.
You pretty much just summed it up right there.
Yeah. Oh, that's it. Show's over.
That's it. We'll see you later.
Yeah.
Well, Reg, talk a little bit, though, because I know a lot of your story. You had a song that's as big as a song can get in the songwriting world with the whole American Idol experience. And to be, a part of that world when that was all going on to where we are now. Talk a little bit about songwriters, what it used to be, and how they would get hired and what they could expect, and contrast it with the situation now, because people really need to understand out there how radically different the world is. So give us a little background.
I don't think they get it. Yeah. I'm not even really sure we get it sometimes, you know. Okay, so as long as there's been media, you know, consumable media, there have been three ways songwriters get paid: through price per unit sales, airplay royalties, and what we call sync fees, and that would be television or film, you know, that kind of play. Right. There's also like sheet music, but that's a really small part of how in gospel music it's a little bit more, but you know, choir books and things like that, there is that entire industry. But for the most part, your three revenue streams are price per unit sale, airplay, and television and film. The price per unit sale was what we call the mechanical royalty, and that was the sort of foundation for how songwriters got paid. So in other words, if Danny Myrick walks into a publishing company and says, hey, I need $75,000 a year to write here. I'm just making a number up. I don't know what. Then what the math would be is, okay, well, you got to have a song on whatever it is, 1.5 million records a year to make that money back, about something like that, because the price per unit sale was, depending on what year we're talking about, anywhere from 7 to 9 cents per unit.
And this is a government set thing.
Always been
really
set by the Congress.
The Dark Ages at now. But that was what had happened.
1908. It's been set by Congress since 1908, and it was all based on piano roll sales. Yeah. Okay.
That's how the whole thing was structured.
That's how the whole thing was structured. Okay. So this is almost as arbitrary can get, right?
Yeah. And even back then, it was just a number someone came up with.
They just came up with it, right? Okay,
so that you at least you could earn something, because here's a few cents.
That's right. As I said in my blog today, you know, Stephen Foster, who wrote arguably the soundtrack of the 19th century America, had no idea how to get paid for what he did. Right. He died with 2 pennies in his pocket. This is a guy who wrote a nation's soundtrack for. And he had no idea how to monetize it. And so, and all the people who followed him at Tin Pan Alley and everything, they didn't know how to monetize it. So songwriters really from the beginning have kind of like not known what they're worth.
Which, when you think about it, as I said, it's where it all starts. If you didn't have the songwriters, you wouldn't have this media. You wouldn't have this forum to... It's a revenue generating machine somehow.
But it also started with going, well, we've never had to pay you before. Why should we pay you now?
That's right.
And so it's like, I mean, we've been stealing it from the get go. Why should we? You know, that started that way. Nobody.
Yeah. Well, and it was all live performance.
That's right.
There's not a product out there, so you'd come and so it was. Passed along by, just by rote, whatever.
Yeah, and then obviously the LP and then broadcast, that all changed.
Yeah, and so media, like recorded media, all that stuff is, people forget, this is like a revolution that's only happened in the last 90 to 100 years.
Right.
This has never been a thing in human history. What we're doing right now is, nobody in Egypt ever did this. Nobody in Rome ever did, Yeah. So a lot of this has been kind of been made up as we go. We're trying to figure it out. What is all, who gets this piece of the pie? What's this worth? What's that worth? Whatever. And I just think from the beginning, the songwriters have kind of been behind the 8 ball in figuring out their own value. We don't know what the intrinsic value of a spin of She's Country is worth. It might be worth $30 a spin. We don't know.
Right.
The market has never been allowed to decide that. It's always been some judge decides what that spin's worth on the radio, and Congress decides what that's worth per sale. And nobody in the business really has ever been able to decide what a spin of She's Country's worth, right? At least when those were that we had those 3 revenue streams, at least you could quantify it. At least you could say, okay, well, here's the math. These are hard numbers. Yeah.
And so when a publisher's going to sign a songwriter, they've got a formula in their head that they can look at.
They used to have a formula.
This could happen and lead to this.
That's right.
Those were then.
That's right.
Now here we are.
So you could go. So Danny and I both were very successful and very hardworking people, and we've been doing it since we were kids. So we kind of knew, we've known each other a long time, and I'm sure he had the same thing. Where I'd sit down and go, okay, I got to be on 4 million records in the next 3 years, and that's how we're going to make the house payment, and that's how we're going to make.
And that's really how you have to look at it.
Absolutely how you have to look at it. And okay, now are those 4 million records out there? Okay, I know this artist, that artist. I can write with this guy, this girl, whatever. Yeah, I think I can project that I can get on 4 million records in the next 3 years. Okay, I go to a publisher. Hey, I think I can bring you this, and I think that's worth this much a year. Okay, now you're living in, now you got your house. Now you can have your kids. Now you can have a life, right? And if one of those songs happens to be a single, and that is the lottery of songwriting, you never know when you're going to get a single. And there's so many people who have a hand in that decision.
Right.
You don't have any control over that as a songwriter, and not a lot of control over it. Sometimes even as an artist, So, but that's how we could make a living. That's how we could, move to the suburbs and put our kids in decent schools and put braces on their teeth and that,
and afford to put all of your time into this art
all
form.
day writing songs.
People got to
right.
understand out there, these guys, when they're in it, they're writing every day, usually with multiple people or with artists and things. It's a job. It's hours a week. It's not just, they have a little fantasy moment somewhere in the week and, and put the Frisbee out there and hope
there's always that movie moment where the guy's sitting there and all of a sudden he's got a spark of inspiration. He gets up and he goes and writes the song. And it's not like that, man.
Yeah.
You are hustling. You're in there every day, and you're grabbing the muse by the hair.
And you got to bring it because the competition is out there. Somebody else is if you aren't,
That's
and
right.
so you're dedicating your life to this thing. It's not a sideline.
Yeah. So we, fortunately and unfortunately, have kind of lived through this new revolution of media, where in the 90s, all of a sudden people were just like stealing music. Right. People want to blame all kinds of things for the underpinning of the music industry going away, but it was really nothing more than that. It was just that now we can get the oranges for free. So there's a hole in the fence, and there was just a hole in the fence. It's that simple. iTunes tried to fix it, or maybe they tried to control it. Whatever your point of view is on that with iTunes. Because they at least sending people to a place to purchase,
Right.
And then that nobody really knew what the royalty rate should be for a download, so they just kind of like band-aided we'll give you the old rate on a download, but we never really got to the bottom of what a download's worth.
And it still hasn't.
And they still haven't,
Yeah, they're trying to kind of figure out, well, you sell a CD for about this much. Well, how much would people pay if they aren't going to get that
Exactly.
thing? And, a little less than that.
Yeah.
Somebody's guess. What does
It's
it mean?
anybody's guess. And so then we got to, really the natural transformation ended at streaming, where it's like, well, I don't want to hold all this stuff on my phone. I definitely don't want to carry all these CDs around. Don't want to carry all these records around. Hey, I don't want to carry all this memory around. I don't want to own all these songs on my phone when I could just stream them.
Right.
I can just pull them down from the cloud. It makes a whole lot of sense. I get it. I love it. It's great technology. We're not going back. But in the middle of that, nobody ever sat down at a table with songwriters and said, okay, what do we think your part of this is worth? Right. Ever. Like that never happened.
Right.
Yeah.
They just decided this is what they're going to give us. Well, now this is the medium of record. This is how everybody gets their music. So that one leg of the table, which was the price per unit sale, which is what we based our entire industry on, has been chopped out. So now you either have a single or you have a movie sync, but there aren't any sales per se to.
Not like there used to be.
Not really at all.
Yeah, they're really gone. I mean, just last year, maybe year before last now, even iTunes in Asia, which I think was their next largest territory, they moved to streaming only on Apple and no more downloads. Ultimately, that's where it's going in the States. And why not? I mean, I'm on Apple Music, And anything I like, typically, if I like the record, I'll download it. But I'm paying the subscription fee. I'm not having to buy the record. The subscription happens, but ultimately I don't have to download. The only blessing in downloading it is that if I travel in an area that has terrible phone service, I can still listen to it, or on a plane.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and just so people again understand the difference between a single, it used to be significant. Now it's life and death. If you write for, pick an artist, Jason Aldean, it's really nice if you have a cut on Jason's album, for the 50 people, they're going to buy the whole album. But if you have a single for Jason Aldean, now you can make some money, because even if the streaming revenue isn't that great, but the airplay things, at least there's some hope out there. So it's, it's a real different thing, where it used to be, man, if you got a cut on a Garth Brooks album, you're in, man, whether it's single or not.
To me, ultimately, honestly, I've gotten to the place that if having a cut, honestly, it almost doesn't matter which country artist. To me, it's a bio filler. I'm happy to have, and so at that point, honestly, I would probably rather have a cut on a Bob Seger or a Willie Nelson record, just because at least no offense to any current artist, but I had several cuts on a Joe Cocker record a few years ago. I didn't make any money, but I was thrilled to death to have some Joe Cocker cuts. But at this point, whether it's Jason Aldean or Luke Bryan or whoever, if I don't have the single or one of the singles, it literally makes no difference to my business. It doesn't help at all in keeping a pub deal. Won't buy me a car. It just doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So.
It won't buy you a tank of gas, really.
That's right.
There's a certain freedom that's come with that too, though, where now, there used to be a day when I would get called from a publisher, hey, you want to write with so-and-so, and you do a cost-benefit analysis on it and go, maybe I wouldn't necessarily love their records or buy their records, but I will lend my services to them because it'll be worth something. Right. Now, if I'm not way into what you do, I'm not interested at all in that phone call.
Yeah, that's the point.
There's a lot of songs that don't get written now because there is literally no reason for me to show up. Mm-hmm. This kid came and wrote with him, this is several years ago, but he had all this stuff going on, and we're writing this song, and he's telling me about all of the revenue streams he's got going. And so what I do is, man, I give the songs away as a kind of a loss leader, and I've got this and I've got that and I've got this. And I'm sitting there thinking, I don't play into any of this. Right. And I started and I called my publisher. I'm like, dude, why was I here?
Right.
I like the kid and I hope he does well, but this is really, I've got children upstairs who need to eat. This has wasted my day. And you hate to think of it that way because it's kind of a jaded way to think of it. But if you're a business person,
it's reality.
It's reality.
Yeah. Hey, and on that subject, just getting back to where this all started with that question, that thought process is why we're where we are, because we were never trained as business people. We were like, first of all, just recognizing even to get a check from, you mean I can really write a song and go get paid? Like it's a favor. Like as opposed to seeing ourselves like your electrician or your doctor or a dentist or a pro ball player, it's ultimately what we should have been saying all along is, yes, you can have my song, I guess. How much are you willing to pay for it? What does it mean to you to have it? And have some sense of the ownership of that. Because now we've gotten into this habit and it's become a cycle for us to kind of go, well, don't forget us. And then we make the assumption every time this technology changes that someone in the room is going, what about the songwriters? We know for a fact, I won't throw out which streaming source, but we know for a fact with one of them, because we found out, from the horse's mouth, in the course of the negotiations on the deal with record companies, one of the people at this platform actually said to the record companies, well, okay, what about the copyright ownership? What about the publishers and the writers? And they said, we'll handle that. Don't worry about that. We'll deal with that.
Yeah,
and just close the deal, and then without us in the circle at all.
Yeah,
we're gonna take another little break. Get another word in for one of our sponsors that we appreciate very much, helping us out with this show. In the studio, guest co-host Paul Aldrich, along with hit songwriters Danny Myrick and Regie Hamm, and you're listening to this edition of The Business Side of Music.
Hey, this is Christian Dyke, and you are listening to one of the coolest podcasts that you can get online these days, and it's with Bob Bender on The Business Side of Music.
You're listening to The Business Side of Music.
Wow, I just joined the Music Starts Here community. This is a truly hidden gem for anyone in the music business. Whether you live in Nashville or anywhere else in the world, Music Starts Here is like a GPS for your music career. This is the place to be if you want to get advice and direction from some seriously talented musical people who have been where you want to go. Music news, events, and a great big community with resources for artists, songwriters, musicians, studio and tech, along with music business advice from pros in the industry, all on one site. Make sure you get your free profile now. Go to www.musicstartshere.org. That's musicstartshere.org.
You're listening to the business side of music.
Hey, we're back in the studio. Guest co-host Paul Aldrich sitting across from me. This is kind of a breath of fresh air for me. I don't have to do all the talking, so thank you. Appreciate that. Along with Danny Myrick and Regie Hamm, two of the more notable songwriters. I mean, you guys have just written a truckload of hits that everybody's heard on the radio. And once again, nobody really knows the songwriter behind the hit, which is sort of what this is about, letting people know. Why be a songwriter?
Well, that's a very good question.
Well, don't now.
Well, there's two things I'll say to that. Number one is that the first thing you said has really always been one of the blessings of being a songwriter. We both spent time on the road. We did the artist thing, gone a lot. When my firstborn came around, I was gone all the time with Western Flyer. Part of the blessing of being a songwriter back in those days is, you know what, I'm going to stay home. I'm going to get that mailbox money. I'll kind of go be blue collar. I'm a hard worker. I go write every day. I can't make, all the money that I would have made as an artist if it blew up, but I can make a good chunk of money, and the bigger hits I have, the more money I can make, and I can be home and have a normal life and coach baseball and all of that. Man, I don't know that, why should I be a songwriter? I don't know that that's a business question to answer. I think that you write songs in the same way, honestly, that you either become a preacher or a teacher because you're really, really motivated or feel somewhat called.
So it's more of a passion statement than it is a business statement.
I was going to say, or the other alternative would be if you just find at a young age that you're really good at it, like a pro sports, pro athlete. Because ultimately, look, there's money to be made. What's happened is now those things have just dwindled down into more of a crapshoot. What I would say now, 20 years ago, somebody would have probably told me, man, really work on your craft, read a lot, become a great lyricist, so forth and so on. Now I would say, yes, work on your lyrics. You probably should learn Pro Tools or Logic. You should learn how to program. I would listen to a lot of different kind of music. Even if you like country music, I would be really familiar with the way that music spacing happens on TV and film. I would get to know music supervisors in TV and film, because that really can replace the old album cut money. And I don't know if we have the time to get into it, but that is the one area, as Regie mentioned earlier, the sync field is the one area that you actually have some negotiating right, and that has not changed since that started. You find out what your song is worth on that because you can negotiate it. But anyway, that would be the thing to me. Man, it's still I still do it more than Regie does. I'm still, I've still have got a pub deal and I'm a full-time writer. But we're also in situations, because we get out and play and we can still go play artist guy. It is important to me now to be able to go to a room, grab my guitar, get up and play my songs. And whether I make $500 or $5,000, I'm in control of that. Yeah. So I do that a lot more.
And I'll speak to the sync thing. One of the things we found in the sync fees is that because that's the one place where the market has been able to figure it out.
Right, non-government control.
Nobody's in control of it except us. What we found is it's worth exactly the same amount as the master.
That's right.
So if they call me and want to sync on one of my, they want the master and they want the copyright, they have to sync them both. The copyright is worth exactly what the master is usually.
And the master being the master recording,
that's
which is part of the whole issue with the streaming thing. What's happened is the music business used to be a master and copyright business. The master is the master recording. She's Country by Jason Aldean is the master. She's Country by me and Bridget Tatum is the copyright, and our publishers. Now the streaming platforms, early 2000s after the whole Napster thing, record label execs, I remember sitting down in conversations with them. You're trying to get songs cut and they're freaking out. Like, labels are shutting down. We're not even going to have a job in 5 years. And then suddenly these platforms happen and they come to the labels, and it so happens that about 70 to 75% of the world's master recordings are owned by 3 companies. And so they're like, oh, hold on, wait, you need our records? Absolutely, we'll cut a deal with you. And now for those that are interested in it, Pandora, Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, they are not copyright-based companies, they're master-based companies. Right. And so they're not really concerned as much with who wrote the song. They're concerned with that Jason Aldean or David Cook master of that. And we don't own that. They don't even own that. Their label owns that.
And I would say, to answer your question about why do this, for me, songwriting became this kind of dual lane thing, where it started out for me as this kind of way that I was figuring out my life, and it was therapy for me, and it was like I had this little talent for it, and it was a way for me to express. Then I found out that I could use that to earn a living, and so so there are songs that I have out there that mean a lot to me, and I've got songs that are out there that I wrote for people, and I was just happy to apply my services to that. But that song may or may not mean a lot to me. Where I am now, and what I would tell people now is, I stay in the first lane now. I write songs that still help me figure my life out. If I'm going to do a master recording on it, I'm going to sing on it, because I'm going to license me to, so I think everybody, probably you're better off to think like an artist, even if you don't want to go out there and be an artist. Think like one, own as much as you can. Keep as much control of it as you can. That doesn't mean don't collaborate and don't be a collaborative soul. Let's just put it this way: if I've got the opportunity to sing a song and get it in a television show, or I could give it to XYZ artist and let them put it in a television show, I'm going to take a shot at it first.
Which is also partially why this has become such a desperate business to great songwriters that are not singers.
That's right. Yeah.
That you go back to the Brill Building, so many great artists, down to Elvis, to Sinatra, to Barbra Streisand, that were not songwriters. The power of a songwriter. So many people that are not really performers. Regie and I have the luxury. We can get out and do that. I've got a lot of friends, a lot younger than me, that are very, very panicked. It's like if they, what's happened now, honestly, is most of my friends that are still writing songs, I'm going to say that are over 30, that are not like new, diving into it in their 20s, still kind of green and wide-eyed and can sleep on a couch at their buddy's house and write 3 times a day. But the ones that are married or close to it in their 30s, man, they're sheetrocking houses, and they're building cabinets, and they're bartending and writing when they can, because you can't get a pub deal without losing all your publishing. And those guys that don't have the ability to get out and play and sing their song, their only option is to go. They're playing the lottery. You're hoping
just right,
get a single.
Hope.
That's it. Put out 100. Hopefully one of them will land.
I did just real quick. I do this thing called Operation Song. We're working with veterans with PTSD, and we do songwriting therapy with them. Did an event like that about a year ago, and there were 2 Hall of Fame songwriters on this thing, and we're all talking backstage. And these 2 guys, these 2 Hall of Fame songwriters, I want to stress that, Hall of Fame songwriters, are talking about going to vocational schools and learning how to do video editing. And I'm sitting back here heartbroken, because I'm like, at your point in your career, you should be revered. You should have some kind of... There should be something, there was a time when the royalties might have been out there where you can live on that the rest of your life, and it just isn't the case anymore.
Right. Yeah, no, they've been very ill-served by the lag time of the industry catching up to the new technology, and it's chasing, and whether it's ever going to get back. Of course, now we got this whole new lawsuit thing going on. We've got a new Music Modernization Act. It sounds like Obamacare for music. I don't know what that means exactly, but it's a new thing. And so now that as we record this, essentially Spotify and other companies are indirectly suing songwriters. I guess Apple is, iTunes is going to hang in there and go with the program. So speak to that a little bit, what you think of the solution as best you understand it, because it's a very gray world. But I mean, tell me about the Music Modernization Act. Good thing, bad thing, jury's out. What do you think?
For me, the jury's out. It's a good thing that it was able to get a coalition, get passed, get signed. That was a kind of a monumental thing. As far as having to know, as far as knowing what it's going to look like in practice, I don't think any of us really know yet. So,
and this is for streaming, essentially, is what
that's right. It basically lets us come to the table with every new format and at least sit at the table. And I think there's some details in terms of like how back royalties get paid, and there's a thing called black box royalties, which are like unclaimed royalties, and it addresses a lot of that stuff that hasn't been addressed. And God bless the people who worked to get it done. I'm not taking anything away from them at all. But I think even they would admit that, hey, look, we don't know how this is all going to shake out in the end. And you can't stop a Spotify from going, no, we're going to sue you guys. Because, songwriters haven't been beaten enough.
Well, I think the deal is we literally have never, ever had a seat at the table. And so I think the thought process and the conversations that we've had with some of our proponents at NSAI and other places that have been fighting on our behalf, step one is we talk through the things that we would prefer to happen. Anybody who's ever done any work with Washington, worked with Congress people, any legislators, whatever, you realize it's a very, very slow moving wheel. Laws are all law is based on precedent. So our precedent is we have not had a seat at the table. The songwriters have not had a voice. I think the thought process on the MMA was, okay, at least this, for the first time, will give us a voice, a seat at the table. Now we'll begin to break down other things. So what's happening is with the Spotify, Pandora, and et cetera decision is that, the attack comes back where you look at the possibility of having to start all over. Ultimately, when we were out doing our Ghost Town Troubadours tour, you sit there and like with most things pertaining to the government, you start having conversations about common sense, and you go, well, the common sense thing, given how old these consent decrees and these laws are, is let's just tear up the consent decree and start over. That seems so simple. Right. At the time we were on the road, I don't know what the situation is now, but the BMI royalty judge was like 89. And so at the point, for people to understand what was important about the MMA is up until that point, we're not even allowed, based on precedent, as we talk about changing royalty rates, we're not even allowed to bring streaming and modern digital technology into the conversation. Yeah. So you have a 180-year-old judge that you can't even who probably doesn't know how to do email. What is more cutting edge these days than music technology? And what I want to say is to Amazon and all of those companies, why don't we put like a 90-year-old in charge of making decisions about your technology? Yeah. See how much they like your email and your cloud and your cloud. But that's where we've been stuck. So the MMA is a step, but it's a long way to. We've said the longest time, this will not be solved in our lifetime, much less our career. Right. You have to hope for the ones right behind us it'll be solved in theirs. Although history is not any indication that it will. Yeah,
and I'd say in the meantime, because I know Reggie's story especially, you're kind of an everyman. You write songs. Now you write songs really that you have a heart for as a primary, as opposed to just being a part of the thing. You've written books. You have a fantastic blog. I encourage anybody that's listening to this to check out Reggie's blog and get on his support him through Patreon. And these are the things. People have to have a few different things going, whether you're a demo producer or you can record, you can wear all the hats technologically or whatever the thing is. If all you can do is write lyrics and come up with a melody, keep that day job and see that path forward, because that's where you're going to be. There's no way this is going to get solved here in your lifetime to be a living. So any thoughts, comments on that?
First of all, I need to correct you. So I'm not an everyman, Paul. I'm an extraordinary man. Forgot that part. I'm incredible. My humility is the greatest part of me. Actually, it's the thing I'm the most proud of. It's the truth. I mean, I'm stretching the limits of everything I can do that I have the least little bit of talent in, and several things that I have no talent in to earn a living. And I used to make more just as a songwriter than I make doing 5 or 6 or 7 things now. Right. And that's just the way of it, man. I do like Danny said, you call upon all of your gifts as much as you can. And, writing the blog was just something I sort of stumbled into. People follow it, and that led to writing books, and that's led me into maybe doing some stuff in the film industry. But I mean, I would love nothing more than to just, write songs and go play them every night at the Bluebird and, have that kind of when that life is working, like Danny said, that there is no better life than that. But that life, I don't know who that life works for. Maybe there's a handful of people, maybe Craig Wiseman, maybe, people like that are just right at the top of the food chain, and they've got the singles coming out every year, and they can live off the radio. And
can I reiterate one thing on that? Just to clarify for some of the listeners who may not be aware, anytime you're in the entertainment business, part of what you do as you get older in this business is recognize that the generational change is an issue. Like if you're a good-looking guy in your 30s, you're an actor. Suddenly, as you age, you're not going to get the same parts. And stylistically, musically, what you do. If you're a great studio musician, the guys who were the go-to guys in the 80s, 90s are not the go-to guys now. That's all normal part of the entertainment business. I just want to clarify and just reiterate, that's not what we're talking about. That's right. We're not talking, staying relevant, staying current with musical trends has nothing to do with this. And so, we talk about Hall of Fame songwriters or whatever. We're talking about people who have saved their money the best they can. The best example I can give you is, I got a royalty check just a few months ago on my part of the mechanical sales of She's Country last year. And my part on it for the second half of the year on mechanicals was $1,056. That's a big song that sold a bunch of records and still is a very regular recurrent. And that money consistently up until the last couple of years, and that's 2009. So the whole point I'm making is that's not like, it's just now coming off of its big sales. Right. That's been off of its mainstream release for several years. But that has been consistently worth 7-8 times that. And then just suddenly this last 2 years, you see it fully drop off because mechanicals are just gone.
It's what we talked about in the beginning. It's the legs getting kicked out from underneath that I don't think anybody saw. When I worked at the record label, we were selling cassettes and we were selling CD singles. I'm dating myself here, aging myself here. And we were selling albums. And then one day, we have the conversation, we're getting out of the singles business because the money's in the albums.
Right.
And within a couple of years, we were like, we're not selling albums anymore. We're selling singles. And you're not selling singles anymore. It's all...
Now you're selling nothing.
We're selling air. Yeah, we're selling air.
There used to be a phrase songwriters would say if I went and heard one of Danny's songs and it was a great song, and I would say to him, man, that's going to put braces on your kids' teeth.
Right.
And that was a phrase that we used. That meant you're going to be making money on that a long time from now. And we don't say that anymore because it's just isn't going to happen, Right.
But we're still going to write songs because we're going to still tell those stories because people are still going to listen.
Listen, man, the art life has never been easy. And so when you look at this from 30,000 feet, I mean, we're kind of looking at it as songwriters, but if you look at it from a higher 30,000 foot, I encourage people who are artists to be artists, but I caution them and just say, this life, even when this was easy for us, it was not easy.
Right.
And this life is not going to be easy for you. And I don't know if it should be easy for you. I almost feel like if you're going to be an artist, you have to earn. There's something in your life and in your struggle that has to earn that. You know what I mean? You have to earn your way through it almost. You have to fight your way through it because then you've got something to say to people. Then you've got something to bring, and then you can relate to people. If all artists were worth $300 million and lived in a castle, I don't know what kind of art we would be getting all the time,
Homogenized.
Yeah, and it just wouldn't be relevant, So I like artists that stay in the struggle, even those who've succeeded who recognize that they need to stay in the struggle. So I say from the larger perspective, go be an artist and go do that, but just know going in, this isn't going to be easy. If you just want to be a songwriter, like Danny said, it's going to be extraordinarily hard if you want to have any kind of like normal life behind it,
And I would say a couple things. First of all, in the event we get really, really passionate about this, and in the event there's been any misunderstanding, we're both extremely grateful. Absolutely. This is not a bitch and moan session. We're so grateful to have been able to, I raised 2 kids, Reggie's in the middle of it now. I haven't done this as a songwriter, as an artist, and moving to Nashville was my dream. If you had told me at 16 I would be in my 50s still doing this for a living, regardless of what the amount of money would have been, I would have taken that deal. So that's number one. And then number two, people ask us all the time, how can we help? What's the best thing to do now pertaining to the streaming and all that? Number one, I would say do what most of us writers have done over the past week. If you have Spotify and Pandora Premium on your phone, cancel it, delete the app. Screw those guys. Sign up to Apple Music or Tidal. They both pay. Tidal actually pays us the most. I don't think they have quite the music selection, but do subscriptions. Don't do the ad-based stuff. The subscriptions, at least some of that money trickles to us. And then,
and even though it's tenths of a cent,
but the ad-based apps we don't get anything from. Right. So at least do that, and they are at least aware. Tidal is run by musicians, and I hope their thing keeps blowing up. Apple Music, that they at least seem to be supportive to whatever point. Nobody's going to pay more than the government tells them to pay. And
but at least they're not opposing it.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And so, and then any connections you have with any legislators, I would encourage you, number one, to think about the songs that have really hit you in your life, from graduation to your wedding song, that you danced with your wife or husband with, to funeral songs, whatever. Those were all written by someone. And encourage your legislators that they have those songs in their lives that were all written by someone. And in the millions of things that they get faced with every day, just remind them that, the music does matter, and these creators, they matter.
A couple things before we go here. You guys did a documentary when you're out on the road, Ghost Town Troubadours, and you're trying to get funding for that too, get that finished up. So definitely get a hold of you guys if anybody out there is interested.
Anybody wants to lose $300,000, give us a call.
Don't lose it writing songs. Help us finish our documentary.
Filmmakers, contact Reggie Hamm directly now. He has several screenplays that are just waiting for $1 million check.
That's exactly right.
I saw some of it. I saw the trailer. I saw some of the inner workings of that, and it's a great body of work if it can get out there and really tells the story of the songwriter.
Thank you. We believe so. I mean, nothing is free, like with anything else. And so we got it shot, and it's there and ready to be edited. And it's going to take either someone giving a bunch of free time, which is just really difficult because there's so much footage to edit, or it's going to take a check.
Yeah. Well, let's hope one or the other or both happens.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
So, last question of the podcast here. How can people find you?
Well, you can mainly, Facebook for me, and it's Reggie. It's 1G, 2 M's, and I've got a fan page, but I've also got regular page, and you can follow that page. I've still got 50 friends I can attach, but I only friend people who send me a private message because I don't know anymore if I'm friending a bot or something. So,
and you've got a blog.
I've got a blog. It's Reggie Hamm actually WordPress, but I'm moving everything really to the Patreon site, which is blahblahblogger.com, and you can go check it out there. I blog every day,
and I got to tell you, some great blogs.
Thank you, Bob. I appreciate that. Thank you. That's something I'm really love doing and enjoy it, and I'm very fascinated that anybody else wants to read it, but it works. No, it's everything. Yeah. I had an agent ask me when I first started doing it, she goes, okay, so do you want to talk about music or art or politics or culture or religion or faith? And I said, yes. And you do. I want to talk about all that stuff, so I do. And I'm not trying to right wing, left wing. I'm trying to kind of look at everything kind of from a 30,000 foot level. I mean, I have a point of view, but I hope that I guess the point is I'm hoping everybody can come and read it. I want to write it in such a way where no matter what your political or religious or faith bent or how you feel about Kiss versus Led Zeppelin, you can still read the blog and
I'm a fan of both, actually.
Me too, man. Me too.
And I just want to say I am encouraged by your blog. In a big way.
I
Just about every day I get to read it, and it's enhancing my life. I really encourage people to check it out.
And I got to tell you, I've copy and pasted some of your blogs.
You're the one.
I'm the one.
Yeah.
Because your stuff's so good. No, I credit you. I mean,
obviously,
thank you,
Bob.
but
I appreciate that, man.
Just,
I appreciate that a lot.
Such good reading, and you hit the nail on the head.
Well,
I wish
that.
I was as smart as you.
Well,
Or at least as
dude,
thought-provoking as you.
it's many years of
Or as
faking
good-looking.
it.
Yeah, well, thanks, Paul.
Like I said, Paul, I'm an extraordinary man. So,
Oh my God.
Danny, how can we find you?
Well, I'm still pissed that Led Zeppelin got rid of the face paint. And you meant the Facebook, right?
Yeah.
I kind of avoid the Facebook. I do get every now and then I'll see the Facebook messages. I'm on Instagram. It's just my name at Danny Myrick, DANNYMYRICK. And I'm having a love-hate with social media right now. I'm kind of like,
so you're the one.
well, it's just like, what is the purpose? I think number one, it's very simple. Anyone who wants to reach out to me, don't reach out about co-writes. My publisher handles that. That's not going to happen through social media. But any discussions about this stuff or any questions about my career, any insight or advice, I can tell you more what not to do than what to do. But I can help with that. And then the social media thing. Somebody said the other day, I've never spent 10 minutes on Instagram and felt better about anything because it's just all kind of comparison. Facebook in the last few years obviously has gotten very just so debating and argumentative, which is what is so great about what Regie does. But you can still be as kind of centrist on something that's really astounding how people take things. But anyway, but feel free to reach out on that. And I am working on starting a podcast or a blog on some different things. If you check out my Facebook, you'll see from time to time I can be pretty vocal about things, but I'm trying to nail down specifically where to go with that.
Regie, Danny, thank you for being on the show. This is great. Love it.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for having us, man.
We're going to do this again. Paul, always a pleasure.
Thank you, brother.
To have you here.
Oh, this is great.
Thanks for being in that co-host seat today.
My pleasure.
Hey, don't forget to check out our affiliates, including Lab Canna, fine hemp products since 2014. Click on their link on our website for more information and how to order their product line. Also, don't forget to check out our other affiliate, Music Starts Here. You can find them at www.musicstartshere.org. Probably the best one-stop shop for the singer, songwriter, or aspiring musician who is relocating to Nashville or wants to. Also, shameless plug for the business side of music. Become a YouTube subscriber. Check out our website at www.businesssideofmusic.com. Follow us on Facebook at the Business Side of Music Podcast or on Twitter at Business Side of Music Podcast.
The Business Side of Music is the creation of Tom Sabella and Traci Snow and is produced by Bob Bender. The Business Side of Music is recorded at Music Dog Studios in Los Angeles, California and Nashville, Tennessee. Production sound design by Keith Stark. Voiceover and promo by Lisa Busan.